when I raised my glass and said with a full heart, "Emily, I'm so proud of you. Tomorrow I finally get to walk you down the aisle." My daughter froze. The smile on her face slowly disappeared. Across the table, her fiancé Ryan suddenly started laughing. Not politely. Not nervously. He actually laughed. Like the whole moment was somehow amusing to him. Emily stared down at her plate. Then she whispered something that made my hands go cold. "Dad, the wedding already happened." For a moment I thought I misheard her. The roast was still sizzling in the oven behind me. The table was set for 3. The wine was breathing quietly in the decanter. Everything had been ready for tomorrow. Already happened? I asked slowly. Ryan leaned back in his chair like this was some casual conversation. "We got married last month," he said. Just like that. Like he was talking about the weather. A month. For an entire month I had been calling venues, confirming catering, arranging flowers, making sure everything was perfect. And the whole time, my daughter had already been married. I felt something deep in my chest shift. Something heavy. Something final. Because that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was what they had done with the $45,000 I gave them for the wedding. But before I continue, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. Your support really helps this channel grow. What happened next was the moment everything in my life changed. My name is Michael Turner. And the night my daughter told me she had already married without me was the night I realized something else. For years, I thought I had been helping my daughter build her future. But sitting there at that dinner table, I finally understood. I had actually been financing my own betrayal. I didn't say anything for several seconds. The kitchen clock ticked quietly on the wall. Ryan reached for the wine bottle like nothing unusual had happened. "Relax, Michael," he said, pouring himself a glass. "It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. Emily still wouldn't look at me. She kept twisting the ring on her finger. Gold. Small diamonds. New. I had never seen that ring before. "When did you buy that?" I asked. Emily glanced down at it. 2 weeks ago. Ryan smirked. "Nice, right?" I didn't answer. Instead I walked into the kitchen and turned off the oven. The roast had started to burn. The smell filled the house. For 28 years I had cooked dinner for Emily on nights that mattered. Birthdays. Graduations. The night she got into college. Tonight was supposed to be another one of those nights. The night before her wedding. Instead I stood there staring at a ruined roast and wondering how long my daughter had been lying to me. I walked back to the table. Ryan was scrolling through his phone. Emily looked nervous now. "Dad, please don't make this a big thing." "A big thing." I pulled out the chair and sat down slowly. "So the wedding happened a month ago," I said. Emily nodded. Ryan took a sip of wine. "Beautiful ceremony," he added. "Sunset on the beach." Emily's voice became softer. "It was just, more intimate." "And the money?" I asked. Neither of them answered. Ryan set his glass down. "We used it." I already knew that part. "But how?" I asked. Ryan smiled again. "Honeymoon." Emily finally looked up at me. "It was amazing, Dad." Her voice sounded hopeful. Like she expected me to be happy for her. "A month in Europe." Ryan leaned back proudly. "Italy first. Then Greece. Then France." He paused. "You should see the hotel in Santorini. Unreal." I looked at Emily. "Did you ever plan to tell me?" Emily hesitated. Ryan answered again. We were going to explain tonight. Explain. I nodded slowly. Then I stood up. Ryan frowned. Where are you going? To open the door, I said. For what? I walked to the front entrance and unlocked it. Then I turned back toward them. You're leaving. Ryan laughed again. You're serious? Yes. Emily's eyes widened. Dad, come on. No, I said quietly. You got married without me. You spent the wedding money on a vacation. You lied to me for a month. The house felt strangely calm. Ryan shook his head. This is ridiculous. Emily stood up. Dad, please. I opened the door wider. Leave. They both stared at me. Ryan finally stood up. You're overreacting. Maybe. But in that moment something inside me finally shifted. People only treat you the way you allow them to. Emily grabbed her purse. Ryan walked past me toward the door. As he stepped outside he said one last thing. You'll calm down in a few days. Emily hesitated. Dad. I waited. She said nothing. Then she followed him outside. I closed the door. The deadbolt slid into place with a sharp click. The house went silent. 3 place settings were still on the table. 3 glasses. 3 plates. But only one person was left in the house. I stood there for a long moment. Then I walked into my office. Because something had started forming in my mind. Not anger. Not revenge. Something quieter. More precise. I opened my laptop. Then I opened my banking app. And that was when I discovered something that made my stomach drop. The $45,000 wedding money was only the beginning. Because there were several other transactions in my account that I didn't recognize. At first I thought it had to be a mistake. Banks make errors sometimes. Charges appear twice. Transfers get delayed. Numbers move around for no clear reason. But the numbers on the screen didn't look like mistakes. They looked deliberate. $3,800. 3 days ago. Description, TC Consulting. I frowned and scrolled down. Another one. $2,500. 2 weeks earlier. Same description. TC Consulting. My fingers slowed on the mouse. TC. Ryan Caldwell. A cold feeling moved slowly through my chest. Like a door somewhere inside me had just opened. I kept scrolling. Another withdrawal. $6,000. Dated exactly 4 weeks ago. The same week Emily said they had gotten married. Again. TC Consulting. For a moment I just stared at the screen. Then I opened the calculator on my phone. Another transaction appeared further down the list. $4,200. Same description. Same initials. I added the numbers again. $16,500. And that was only the last 6 weeks. A memory surfaced suddenly. Emily's voice from earlier that spring. Dad. Ryan has an incredible business opportunity. I leaned back slowly in my chair. Another memory followed. Dad, can you transfer some money into the shared account? Just temporarily. The shared account. I opened another tab and logged into it. The page loaded. Balance, $61,942. That number didn't make sense. 2 months ago the account had been well over $100,000. My stomach tightened. I opened the full transaction history. The screen filled with withdrawals. Smaller ones. $1,200. $1,800. $2,000. $950. All with the same description. TC Consulting. Ryan Caldwell. I sat perfectly still in the quiet office. The house felt different now. Colder. Like the walls themselves had started listening. Then I remembered something Emily had asked 6 months earlier. Dad, can we make the account joint? Just in case of emergencies. At the time it seemed reasonable. A father helping his daughter. I scrolled further. More withdrawals. Some from ATMs. Some online transfers. All authorized through Emily's access. And all flowing to the same place. Ryan. I rubbed my eyes slowly. The total kept growing. $21,000. $27,000. $33,000. When I finally finished adding everything together, the final number appeared. $38,400. Gone. Quietly. Piece by piece. Over 4 months. And suddenly something Ryan had said earlier that evening echoed in my mind. Honestly, Michael, the honeymoon was a much better use of the money. At the time I thought he meant the wedding fund. Now I understood something else. The honeymoon hadn't just been paid with the $45,000 wedding money. It had been funded for months before that. A slow drain. Careful. Quiet. Hidden behind my daughter's access to the account. I sat there for a long time. Most people would have felt rage. Or heartbreak. But something else happened instead. Something colder. Much clearer. Because numbers tell stories. And these numbers told a very precise one. I opened a blank spreadsheet. Column 1, date. Column 2, amount. Column 3, description. Then I started entering every transaction. One by one. By midnight I had filled 3 pages. When I reached the final total, I stopped typing. $83,400. That was how much money had disappeared. Not including the wedding fund. And suddenly the secret wedding made perfect sense. It hadn't been romantic. It hadn't been spontaneous. It had been convenient. Very convenient. Because if I had attended that wedding, I might have started asking questions. And Ryan clearly didn't want questions. I saved the spreadsheet. Then I created a new folder on my computer. I named it something simple. Records. Because one thing my father taught me a long time ago was this. When someone betrays you, you don't react immediately. You observe. You collect information. You stay calm. And you wait. I closed the laptop. But just before I turned off the office light, my phone vibrated on the desk. Emily. Calling. For the first time since they left. I watched the phone ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then it stopped. A message appeared on the screen. Dad, can we talk tomorrow? I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I turned the phone face down. Because something told me. That conversation was already far too late. I didn't reply to Emily's message. Instead, I opened the banking records again. Numbers don't argue. They don't lie. They just sit there and wait for you to notice them. And the more I looked, the worse the picture became. The earliest transfer to TC Consulting had happened almost 5 months earlier. $1,500. At the time I hadn't questioned it. Emily often asked for help with small business expenses. Marketing software. Office rent. Consulting fees. She always had a reason. And I always believed her. I scrolled further. The next payment was $2,200. Then $3,000. Then another $2,000. Each transfer spaced just far enough apart to avoid drawing attention. Each one explained in a quick message from Emily. Dad, just a short-term investment. Dad, Ryan is working on a deal. Dad, we'll pay you back when it closes. At the time it had sounded reasonable. Ryan always spoke confidently about business. Real estate deals. Short-term property flips. Private investors. Big words. Big promises. I remembered the first time Emily had introduced him to me. 3 years earlier. He had arrived at my house wearing an expensive suit and a watch that probably cost more than my first car. He had shaken my hand firmly. Mr. Turner, I've heard a lot about you. Then he spent most of the evening talking about opportunities. Everything was always an opportunity. Phoenix real estate is exploding. There's money everywhere if you know where to look. At the time I thought he was ambitious. Now, looking at the bank records, I wondered if he had been something else entirely. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Emily. Dad, please answer me. A second message appeared almost immediately. Ryan says this is just a misunderstanding. I stared at the words. A misunderstanding. I looked back at the spreadsheet on my screen. $83,400. Numbers that had quietly disappeared from my accounts. That didn't look like a misunderstanding. That looked like a pattern. And patterns don't happen by accident. I opened another folder on my computer. Old emails. Search, Emily money transfer. Hundreds of results appeared. Messages from the last several years. Most of them started the same way. Dad, can you help me with something? I opened the first one. 3 years earlier. Emily asking for help with rent after she moved into a nicer apartment. 2 years earlier. A request for help buying a car. 1 year earlier. Startup funding for her marketing company. I opened the bank statement from that year. $80,000. Transferred directly to Emily. At the time I had believed in her dream. A father supporting his daughter. I opened another document. Business registration records. Emily's company had officially existed for 14 months. Then it had quietly dissolved. I remembered the phone call. Dad, the market just wasn't right. At the time I told her it was okay. Businesses fail. That happens. But looking at the bank records now, I noticed something else. Several of the TC consulting transfers had happened while her business was supposedly operating. Which meant the money I invested in her company might never have been used for the company at all. I leaned back slowly in my chair. The picture was becoming clearer. Piece by piece. Like a puzzle assembling itself. Ryan Caldwell hadn't appeared suddenly in Emily's life. He had appeared in my bank accounts first. And the moment he entered the picture, the money started moving. Quietly. Carefully. Until tonight. Tonight was the first time the illusion cracked. My phone buzzed again. Another message. This time from Ryan. Michael, we should talk like adults. I looked at the message for several seconds. Then I set the phone down. Because at that moment I realized something important. Ryan thought tonight had been an argument. A family disagreement. Something emotional. But it wasn't. What had started tonight was something much simpler. A financial audit. And I was just getting started. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I had slept well. I hadn't. But because my mind had already started working through the numbers. The house was quiet. Sunlight was just starting to push through the kitchen window. For a moment everything felt normal. Coffee brewing. The sound of the refrigerator humming. The familiar rhythm of a morning that should have been ordinary. Except nothing about my life was ordinary anymore. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and opened the spreadsheet again. $83,400. That number stared back at me. But something still bothered me. A detail I couldn't quite place. Ryan had talked about business opportunities. Emily had repeated those same explanations for months. Investments. Consulting. Deals about to close. But none of those explanations had ever included documentation. No contracts. No proposals. No real information. Just confidence. Confidence and promises. I opened another banking window and pulled up the joint account again. Then I clicked on the individual transactions. Each transfer had a destination. Each destination had an account number. I copied one of them and searched for it. The result appeared almost immediately. A small business account. Registered under Caldwell Consulting LLC. Owner, Ryan Caldwell. I leaned back slowly. So the money hadn't gone to outside investors. Or property deals. Or consulting projects. It had gone directly to Ryan. Piece by piece. 4 months. My phone vibrated on the table. Emily again. I ignored it. Instead I opened another browser tab. Property records. Arizona Public Database. Search, Ryan Caldwell. 3 results appeared. 2 apartments. Both rented. 1 car loan. A Tesla. Leased. No property ownership. No real estate company. No investment firm. Just a consulting company with a bank account connected to mine. I stared at the screen. The puzzle was almost complete now. But I still needed one final piece. So I opened Emily's old business documents. The startup she had asked me to fund. Her marketing company. The one that had needed $80,000 in initial capital. I pulled up the company bank statements. Then I started scanning the transaction list. At first it looked normal. Office supplies. Software subscriptions. Small marketing expenses. Then I noticed something. Another familiar name. TC Consulting. Several transfers. $3,000. $4,500. $2,000. Each one labeled Strategic Consulting Services. I added them quickly. $9,500. Almost $10,000 from Emily's company. Paid directly to Ryan. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Not shock. Not anger. Just clarity. Because the story was obvious now. Emily had asked me to invest in her company. Ryan had positioned himself as a consultant. And the money had quietly moved from my account. Into his. The company had never really existed. It had simply been a pipeline. A pipeline that led directly to Ryan Caldwell. I closed the documents slowly. The quiet in the house felt heavier now. My phone buzzed again. A call this time. Emily. I let it ring. Then another call followed immediately. Ryan. I watched the screen light up again and again. 5 missed calls. 7. 9. Finally the ringing stopped. A text appeared. From Ryan. Michael, we need to clear this up. Emily is very upset. I stared at the message. Then another one appeared. We can explain everything. Explain. That word again. I looked back at the spreadsheet. $83,400. Then I looked at the older records. $80,000 for Emily's startup. $45,000 for the wedding. A slow realization moved through my mind. The money Ryan had taken from the joint account was only a small part of the story. Because if I added everything together, the real number was much larger. Much larger than even Ryan probably realized. I opened a new page in the spreadsheet. Then I started typing again. College tuition. $120,000. Startup investment. $80,000. Car loan assistance. $35,000. Apartment rent support over 3 years. $79,200. Wedding fund. $45,000. Unauthorized transfers. $38,400. The total appeared at the bottom of the page. $397,600. Nearly $400,000. That was how much money I had given my daughter over the years. And somehow, almost all of it had ended up connected to Ryan Caldwell. I closed the laptop slowly. Then I looked around the quiet kitchen. For the first time since the dinner the night before, I allowed myself to feel something. Not grief. Not anger. Just a deep sense of finality. Because the truth was simple now. Emily hadn't just lied to me about the wedding. She had been lying to me for years. And Ryan Caldwell hadn't just married my daughter. He had built an entire life on money that wasn't his. I picked up my phone. Scrolled through my contacts. Then I stopped on a name I hadn't called in a long time. Martin Ashford. Estate attorney. I pressed the call button. Because if Ryan Caldwell thought he had taken advantage of me, he was about to learn something very important. I had spent 30 years building my businesses. And the first rule of business was simple. When someone steals from you, you stop the losses immediately. And then you make sure it never happens again. Martin answered on the third ring. Michael? Haven't heard from you in a while. His voice sounded exactly the same as I remembered. Calm. Professional. Patient. Good morning, Martin, I said. You free today? There was a short pause. Something wrong? Yes, I said quietly. Very. An hour later I was sitting in Martin's office. Large windows. Tall bookshelves. The same leather chairs that had been there for years. I placed the printed spreadsheet on his desk. Martin adjusted his glasses and started reading. For a long time he didn't say anything. The only sound in the room was the soft turning of paper. Finally he looked up. Does your daughter know you discovered this? No. And the son-in-law? Also no. Martin leaned back in his chair. That's good. I frowned slightly. Good. Yes, he said calmly. Because if they knew, they'd already be trying to cover it. He tapped the papers with one finger. You did the right thing documenting everything first. I nodded. Can they legally take money from the joint account? I asked. Martin shrugged slightly. Yes. That answer didn't surprise me. But, he added slowly, that doesn't mean the story ends there. He pointed to the section labeled TC Consulting. If these transfers were made under false pretenses. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Fraud. The word hung quietly in the air between us. I leaned forward. I'm not interested in court battles, I said. That's good, Martin replied. Because court battles take years. He slid the papers back toward me. But there are other ways to solve problems like this. Such as? Martin folded his hands. Well, he said thoughtfully, first we need to understand how much control you still have. He opened his computer and pulled up several documents. Your daughter still has access to the joint account, he said. Yes. Your primary assets are still held in your trust. Yes. Your properties. 3 of them are in the trust. Martin nodded slowly. Good. Then he looked at me carefully. Michael, how attached are you to the idea of leaving your estate to Emily? For a moment I didn't answer. Because that question reached somewhere much deeper than bank accounts. It reached into 28 years of memories. First steps. School recitals. The day she called me crying because someone broke her heart in college. I had always believed I was building something for her future. A legacy. A safety net. But now. I wasn't so sure. I used to be very attached to that idea, I said quietly. Martin studied my face. And now? I looked down at the papers again. Ryan's name repeated across the pages. Transfer after transfer. Lie after lie. Now, I said slowly, I'm reconsidering. Martin nodded once. Then he turned the screen of his laptop toward me. Michael, your estate plan hasn't been updated in almost 6 years. I stared at the document. Emily's name appeared several times. Primary beneficiary. Trust successor. Property inheritance. Martin tapped the screen. If something happened to you tomorrow. He didn't finish the sentence. But I knew exactly what he meant. Ryan Caldwell would eventually control almost everything I had spent my life building. My house. My investments. My businesses. Everything. A strange feeling passed through me. Not anger. Something colder. Something sharper. Clarity. Martin closed the document. You don't have to decide anything today, he said. But if you want my advice. I do. Then you should pause everything. Everything. Every financial connection, he said. Accounts. Access. Inheritance. He leaned forward slightly. Because right now your son-in-law believes something very dangerous. What's that? That you're weak. Martin's voice stayed calm. But the truth is. He gestured toward the numbers on the paper. You're simply generous. The room fell silent. Then Martin said something that changed the entire direction of my thinking. Michael, the worst thing you could do right now. He paused. Is confront them. I raised an eyebrow. Why? Because confrontation gives them time. Time for what? To protect themselves. He folded his hands again. If you want to solve this problem properly. Then what? Martin smiled faintly. You prepare first. And that was the moment I realized something important. Ryan thought this was a family conflict. An emotional situation. Something messy and impulsive. But Martin was right. This wasn't emotional anymore. This was strategic. And the first step in any strategy is patience. When I left Martin's office, the city felt strangely normal. Cars moved through the afternoon traffic. People walked past coffee shops, talking, laughing, checking their phones. No one around me had any idea that something in my life had quietly shifted. Something permanent. I sat in my car for a few minutes before starting the engine. Then I pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from Emily. 2 from Ryan. Another message. Dad, please answer me. Another one right below it. Ryan says we can explain everything if you just talk to us. Explain. That word again. I locked the phone and placed it on the passenger seat. Martin was right. Talking now would only help them. Preparation had to come first. The first step was simple. I drove straight to my bank. The same branch I had used for almost 20 years. The manager, Karen, recognized me immediately when I walked in. Michael, good to see you, she said with a warm smile. What can I help you with today? I need to make some changes to my accounts. 10 minutes later we were sitting in her office. I explained everything carefully. Not emotionally. Just facts. Numbers. Transactions. Karen listened quietly while reviewing the records. Finally she nodded. We can remove your daughter's access to the joint account immediately. Do it, I said. She typed quickly. A few seconds later she looked up. It's done. Just like that. Months of quiet access disappeared with a few keystrokes. Then she asked another question. Would you like to transfer the remaining balance to a private account? Yes. The transfer completed within seconds. When I looked at the screen again, the joint account showed 0. Closed. Disconnected. Another door quietly shutting. Karen printed the confirmation and slid it across the desk. Anything else? I thought about it. Yes, I said. I want alerts. For what exactly? Any attempt to access my accounts. Karen nodded again. That can be arranged. By the time I left the bank, the financial connection between Emily and me was already gone. At least the obvious one. But the real work was just beginning. That evening I returned home and opened the laptop again. The records folder was waiting on the desktop. Inside it were the spreadsheets. The transfers. The timelines. Everything. I added another document. Title, Assets. Then I started listing them. The house. My investment accounts. 3 rental properties. 2 business partnerships. A small portfolio of commercial real estate I had built over the last 15 years. Each line represented years of work. Years of decisions. Years of risk. And according to the documents Martin had shown me, all of it would eventually go to Emily. Which meant one day, it would go to Ryan. I sat back in the chair and stared at the screen. Then I opened another document. Estate revision. Because if Ryan Caldwell believed he had secured his future through my daughter, he had made a very expensive mistake. My phone buzzed again. This time I picked it up. Ryan. Calling. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. Michael, he said quickly, sounding relieved. Finally. His voice carried the same confident tone he always used. Like every conversation was something he controlled. We need to talk, he continued. Emily's voice sounded faint in the background. Dad? Are you there? I remained silent for a moment. Then I spoke calmly. I'm busy tonight. Ryan paused. Busy? Yes. But this situation. I said I'm busy. Another pause. Longer this time. Then Ryan tried a different tone. More serious. Michael, this misunderstanding is getting blown out of proportion. Misunderstanding. I almost smiled. Is it? I said. Yes, Ryan replied quickly. We can explain everything. There it was again. Explain. I leaned back in my chair. Ryan, I said quietly. Yes. We'll talk soon. Before he could answer, I ended the call. Then I placed the phone back on the desk. Because the truth was simple. They still believed they could talk their way out of this. Still believed this was about emotions. Apologies. Family. But they were wrong. Very wrong. Because while they were trying to prepare explanations, I was preparing something else entirely. A future where Ryan Caldwell would never touch another dollar of mine again. 3 days passed. During those 3 days, Emily called 12 times. Ryan called 8. Messages kept arriving. Dad, please answer me. Michael, we need to resolve this. This is getting ridiculous. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I followed Martin's advice. Preparation first. Conversation later. On the fourth day I returned to Martin's office. This time the documents were already waiting on the table. A new trust structure. Updated beneficiaries. Property assignments. Martin slid the papers toward me. If you sign these, your daughter will no longer inherit your estate. The words hung in the room for a moment. 6 years ago, that sentence would have been impossible for me to imagine. Now it felt inevitable. What happens instead? I asked. Martin opened another document. The majority of your assets move into a charitable foundation you control. A foundation? Yes. He pointed to the page. Education grants. Business scholarships. Community housing projects. I read the title at the top of the document. The Turner Opportunity Fund. Martin continued. You remain the sole director. And after I'm gone, a board will manage it. I looked through the rest of the pages. Properties transferred to the foundation. Investment income funding scholarships. Business mentorship programs. Everything I had built. Still doing something meaningful. Just not for Ryan Caldwell. And Emily? I asked. Martin turned one last page. A limited trust distribution. I read the number. $25,000. One time. Final. Not enough for Ryan to build a life around. Not enough to keep draining. Just enough that no one could say I had abandoned my daughter entirely. I picked up the pen. For a moment my hand hesitated. Not because I doubted the decision. But because I remembered the little girl who used to run through my house with scraped knees and messy hair. The one who used to hold my hand crossing the street. That girl deserved everything. But somewhere along the way, that girl had disappeared. And the woman sitting beside Ryan Caldwell at my dinner table had made her own choices. I signed the first page. Then the next. Then the next. When the last signature dried, Martin gathered the papers neatly. It's done, he said. Effective immediately. Just like that. Ryan Caldwell's future vanished. But there was still one final step. I pulled out my phone. Martin watched silently while I typed. Dinner tomorrow night. You and Emily. 7 p.m. Come alone. I sent the message to Ryan. Less than 10 seconds later, the phone buzzed. Finally. We'll be there. Martin raised an eyebrow. You're inviting them back? Yes. Why? I slipped the phone into my pocket. Because there's one thing left to do. The next evening at exactly 7 o'clock. Ryan Caldwell was going to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. The next evening arrived quietly. At exactly 6:58 p.m. Headlights appeared through the front window. Ryan's car. Right on time. He stepped out first, wearing the same confident smile he always carried. Emily followed him more slowly. She looked tired. Nervous. Ryan knocked twice. I opened the door. For a moment none of us spoke. Then Ryan smiled. Michael, he said. Glad we're finally talking like adults. Emily looked at me carefully. Dad, can we come in? I stepped aside. They walked into the house. Nothing had changed since the last time they were here. The table. The chairs. The quiet kitchen. Ryan glanced around. Nice place, he said casually, sitting down. Emily stayed standing for a moment. Then she sat beside him. Ryan leaned forward. Look, Michael, things got emotional the other night. He clasped his hands together. But Emily and I want to clear everything up. Emily nodded quickly. We should have told you about the wedding sooner. Ryan added smoothly. And the honeymoon, maybe we should have discussed the money first. Maybe. The word hung in the air. Ryan leaned back in his chair. But we're family, he continued. These things happen. I listened quietly. Ryan took my silence as encouragement. So let's move forward, he said. Emily looked hopeful again. Yes, Dad, we just want things to go back to normal. Normal. I nodded slowly. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Ryan smiled. Good. I reached into the folder on the table and slid a document across to him. Ryan glanced down at it. Then his smile faded. What's this? Read it, I said. Ryan picked up the paper. Emily leaned closer to see. The room went silent. Ryan's eyes moved across the page. Then he stopped. What is this supposed to mean? It means, I said calmly, that the joint account is closed. Emily blinked. What? Ryan flipped to the next page. His expression hardened. And this? That's the estate revision. Emily grabbed the paper from his hands. Her eyes moved quickly across the text. Then she looked up at me. Dad, what is this? Ryan stood up suddenly. This says she's no longer the primary beneficiary. That's correct. Emily's voice shook. What are you talking about? I folded my hands on the table. Everything has been transferred into a charitable foundation. Ryan stared at me. You're joking. No. Emily shook her head slowly. Dad, you can't be serious. Ryan's voice grew sharper. You're doing this because of one misunderstanding. I looked at him calmly. No. Ryan stepped closer to the table. This is insane. Is it? I asked. Emily looked like she might cry. Dad, please don't do this. Ryan turned toward her. Relax, he said. Then he looked back at me. You'll fix this tomorrow. His voice carried absolute confidence. Like the outcome was obvious. I leaned back in my chair. No. Ryan frowned. What do you mean no? I mean the documents are already filed. The room went silent. Ryan's expression changed. For the first time since I had met him. The confidence cracked. You're bluffing. I slid one final paper across the table. Martin's official confirmation. Ryan read it. Then read it again. Emily whispered. Dad, please. Ryan looked up slowly. You're destroying your relationship with your daughter over money. I met his eyes. No, I said calmly. You did that. Ryan stared at me. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then Emily began to cry. Ryan grabbed the documents from the table. You'll regret this, he said coldly. I stood up. No, I replied quietly. I won't. Ryan shoved the papers back onto the table. Let's go, he snapped to Emily. She hesitated. Then followed him toward the door. Ryan stopped just before stepping outside. He turned back one last time. You're making a huge mistake. Maybe. But as the door closed behind them, the house felt quieter than it had in years. Because for the first time, Ryan Caldwell finally understood something. The money was gone. And it wasn't coming back. The house was silent again after they left. The same silence as the night of that dinner. But this time it felt different. Lighter. Like something heavy had finally been lifted. I walked back to the kitchen and sat down at the table. 3 chairs. 3 plates. The same place where everything had started. My phone vibrated on the table. A message from Emily. I looked at the screen for a long moment before opening it. Dad, please. We need to fix this. Ryan says there must be a way to reverse everything. I stared at the message. Then another one appeared. We're family. Family. That word used to mean something very simple to me. It meant trust. It meant loyalty. It meant that the people closest to you would never quietly drain your life while smiling across the table. But somewhere along the way, those meanings had changed. Another message appeared. This time from Ryan. Michael, you're being emotional. You'll regret this decision. I almost laughed. Emotional. That was the last thing I felt. Because every decision I had made over the past few days had been calm. Measured. Carefully thought through. The money was already gone. The accounts were closed. The trust had been rewritten. There was nothing left for Ryan to negotiate. I typed one final message. Take care of your own life now. Then I turned the phone off. Outside, the evening air moved softly through the trees. For the first time in days, my mind felt quiet. Not angry. Not bitter. Just clear. Because the truth was simple. For years I believed I was building a future for my daughter. But the moment she chose Ryan over honesty, she chose a different future. And sometimes the hardest lesson a parent has to learn is this. Love does not mean unlimited access. Love does not mean unlimited forgiveness. And love certainly does not mean unlimited money. I stood up and walked toward the office. On the computer screen, the folder named Records was still open. Inside were the spreadsheets. The documents. The evidence. Everything that had led to this moment. I closed the folder. Then I turned off the computer. Because some chapters don't end with shouting. They end quietly. With a door closing. And a man finally choosing to protect the life he spent decades building. Thank you for listening. Calm justice doesn't shout. It keeps records.